warm 4th of July night in 2001, a 20-year-old woman left a beach party to drive home. Minutes later, her car was found abandoned in the middle of the road. Engine running, driver's door open, flip-flops left behind, and bullet holes punched through the windshield. There was blood on the seats, but no body. This is the story of how a random holiday night turned into one of California's most chilling cases, and how a small mistake by a serial predator finally exposed the truth. If you're new to CrimNest, we dive deep into real cases, evidence, and the people behind them, far beyond the headlines. And a quick reminder, supporting CrimNest by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing these stories helps us keep bringing you carefully researched true crime content without sensationalism. Megan Barosso was born on March 15, 1981 in Camarillo, California. Her parents separated when she was young, and she lived with her mother while still seeing her father regularly. She loved dancing. It wasn't just a hobby, it was part of her identity. When her mom lost her job, they were forced to move to the small town of Templeton, 3 hours away. Megan had to leave behind her school, her friends, and the life she knew. After graduating high school, she moved back closer to home, renting a small apartment in Moore Park, enrolling in community college, and working as an assistant in the purchasing department of a clothing manufacturer. She wasn't sure what she wanted to major in yet, but she knew she wanted to study, work, spend time with friends, and visit her dad, who had recently remarried and had a new baby boy. Megan made a point of being a present big sister. On July 4, 2001, her plans were simple: spend the holiday with friends, watch fireworks, and go home to rest before work the next morning. She never got that chance. Megan started the day at her friend Lindsay's house, where the family was hosting a barbecue. Later, they got invited to a beach party in a nearby town. Megan left her car at Lindsay's place, and friends drove them to the party. They spent the night moving between the house and the beach, watching fireworks, talking, and hanging out. There was nothing strange, no arguments, no drama. One small detail stood out later. The host, a guy named John. He kept asking Lindsay to introduce him to Megan. Lindsay refused, saying Megan wasn't interested in casual flings. John never left the party, and multiple guests confirmed he'd stayed there all night, so police later ruled him out. Around 2 a.m., Megan and Lindsay were dropped back at Lindsay's house. Lindsay offered to let Megan stay the night, worried about the late drive. But Megan said no, she had to work in the morning. As they hugged goodbye, Megan's purse slipped, spilling everything onto the ground. In the rush to scoop things up, she accidentally grabbed Lindsay's phone instead of her own. Minutes later, Lindsay realized her phone was gone, called it from the house line. Megan picked up, turned around, returned the phone, and then headed out again. That small detour might have changed everything. Around 4 a.m., a security guard patrolling Moore Park heard popping sounds in the distance and assumed they were leftover fireworks. Following the noise, he found something strange. A car stopped awkwardly across the road, partly on the median engine running headlights and windshield wipers, on driver's door hanging open. No driver in sight, a woman's flip-flop lay on the asphalt. The other was still under the driver's seat. It didn't look like a simple drunk driving hit and run. When he looked closer, he saw blood inside the car. He immediately called police. Officers arrived and quickly realized this was no accident. Bullet holes covered the windshield. The driver's window was shattered and bloodstains were scattered inside the cabin. But there was one disturbing detail: no blood outside the car. If the driver had climbed out, there would have been a blood trail. There wasn't. On the side of the car, they saw deep scratches and damage, like another vehicle had sideswiped it. Inside, they found a blood-stained purse and a cell phone under the seat. The phone wasn't registered to the car's renter. The car itself was a rental. When police contacted the company, they learned who had rented it: 20-year-old Megan Barosso. Police called every hospital in the area. No one matching Megan's description had been admitted. They searched the scene, finding several shell casings. Ballistics revealed they came from an AK-47, an assault rifle, not a common street weapon. With no witnesses, no cameras, and no fingerprints, detectives had to reconstruct the event from the car's black box data in bullet trajectories. It appeared that another vehicle sideswiped Megan's car on the driver's side. Megan tried to get away, accelerating. The attacker drove ahead, lay in wait near a traffic light. When she stopped at the light, he opened fire. The first shots missed. As she tried to escape, a final shot hit her in the stomach. Her car veered onto the median and came to a stop. Blood patterns suggested she then reached toward her purse, likely for the phone, before someone approached the car. What happened next in those final seconds on the road, only two people knew: Megan and her attacker. News of the case spread fast. A young woman apparently shot with an assault rifle and kidnapped off a quiet street. The entire county panicked. Police launched massive searches with dogs, officers on foot, helicopters with infrared cameras, and roadblocks to question drivers. No one had seen anything except the abandoned car later that morning. Tips poured in. One anonymous caller described a man stuffing what looked like a woman's body into the trunk of a burgundy sedan near a mountain area known as a dumping ground. The location was searched, but nothing turned up. With no motive and no suspect, investigators brought in profiler Sharon Hagen. After studying the case and comparing it to unsolved crimes in the area, she believed the motive wasn't road rage, it was sexual. She pointed to earlier attacks. A woman named Joanna, abducted from her bed by a masked man claiming to be a cop, taken to a park and assaulted. Another woman, Donna, kidnapped at knife point, assaulted in a car and in a house, then chillingly driven back and comforted by her attacker. Donna had seen her attacker's face and described him in detail. Police never caught him. Sharon believed these cases, and Megan's, were connected. Someone had been hunting women in the area for years. Weeks after Megan vanished in another town, a man reported that his neighbor had robbed him. On paper, it sounded like a routine case. Stolen property, a frustrated victim, and a suspect with a name and an address. Police arrested the neighbor, 31-year-old Vincent Sanchez. Sanchez lived with two roommates. One of them legally owned an AK-47 rifle, which was kept in the house. Sanchez had easy access to it, and he knew the layout of the home, when people were gone, and how to move around without drawing attention. At first, local police didn't connect this burglary to Megan's disappearance. Different city, different crime. To them, this was just another theft to process. File the report, collect evidence, interview the suspect. No one imagined it might be the crack that opened a much darker story. That changed when Sanchez, calling from jail, placed a panicked phone call to one of his roommates. He wasn't asking about a lawyer or his job. He begged his roommate to get rid of a bag he dumped in a nearby trash container. The urgency in his voice made it clear this wasn't a small favor. The roommate, assuming the bag contained stolen goods, went to retrieve it. Maybe he thought he could return whatever was inside and smooth things over. He pulled the bag from the trash and opened it. Inside were videotapes, lots of them. Not just one or two, enough to look like a collection someone had been building over time. Curious and uneasy, he watched one. On screen, a masked man assaulted bound women while speaking to them in a calm, almost rehearsed voice. The roommate didn't need to see a face. The voice was unmistakable. It was Sanchez. Some of the footage was clearly filmed inside their shared home. Familiar walls, furniture, and rooms he recognized instantly. The bag also contained women's underwear and explicit photos, including pictures of Sanchez's girlfriend posed in ways that suggested he liked to control not just people's bodies, but how they were captured and kept. The roommate realized this wasn't just about burglary anymore. It was about something far more dangerous. He called police. When officers searched Sanchez's room, they found even more disturbing items: women's belongings and underwear. That didn't match anyone in the house: knives and a shotgun, handcuffs and restraints, a video camera and other recording equipment. What started as a simple burglary investigation had just uncovered what looked like a serial sexual predator who had been documenting his crimes. Profiler Sharon was contacted. She compared the tapes to the files she'd been studying, the earlier abductions and assaults. She recognized several of the victims, not necessarily by face but by details: how they described the rooms, the words he used, the threats he made. She was convinced this wasn't a new offender. This was the man she'd been tracking on paper for years. Donna, the woman who'd been kidnapped just days before Megan's disappearance, had one crucial advantage over some of his other victims. She'd seen her attacker's face. She remembered his expression, his build, and the way he spoke when he wasn't trying to disguise his voice. Police arranged a lineup. Donna was brought in, supported by investigators and advocates who knew how hard this moment could be. She was told not to feel pressured. If she didn't recognize anyone, that was okay. She walked in, looked at the men, and almost immediately pointed straight at Vincent Sanchez. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty. That was the man who had abducted and assaulted her. Her identification connected Sanchez to at least one of the brutal attacks Sharon had profiled, but Megan's case was still technically separate: an abandoned car, an AK-47, and a missing woman. Investigators needed more than a pattern. They needed direct links. The AK-47 turned out to be one of those links. Detectives knew from shell casings and ballistic analysis that an AK-style rifle had been used in the roadside attack on Megan's car. Now they had a suspect tied to a house where an AK-47 was kept and where he had free access. When detectives visited Sanchez's home, the roommate who owned the rifle admitted something odd. The cleaning rod for the AK-47 had mysteriously gone missing. That detail matched a metal rod found near Megan's abandoned car. One of those small, easy-to-overlook pieces of evidence that suddenly clicked into place. While searching Sanchez's room more carefully, investigators noticed a woman's jacket on the floor. It had been overlooked in the earlier chaos, just another piece of clothing in a messy room. This time they paid attention. It matched the jacket Megan had been seen wearing on the night she vanished. The jacket was sent to the lab. Testing revealed tiny specks of Megan's blood on it, too small to see at a first glance, but undeniable under forensic analysis. Her clothing, in his room, with her blood on it, was a devastating piece of evidence. Sanchez's roommates also described his behavior on the night of July 4th. Drinking with friends until about 10 p.m. Supposedly falling asleep in the living room afterward. Around 2 a.m., he was suddenly gone. Of tiny random detail that no one could plan for, and it tied everything together. On August 10th, Vincent Sanchez was charged with 62 counts, including attacks on at least 13 women and the murder of Megan Barosso. The charges represented years of violence finally being dragged into the open. In court, the defense didn't try to claim he was a completely innocent man wrongly accused. The tapes, the survivors, and the physical evidence made that nearly impossible. Instead, they tried to narrow the focus. They argued that Sanchez hadn't planned to kill Megan and that the state couldn't prove she'd been alive during any sexual assault. Their goal was to chip away at the intent and avoid the death penalty. The prosecution answered with a larger picture. They showed how Sanchez had spent years stalking, kidnapping, and assaulting women. They walked the jury through the evidence: Megan's jacket with her blood on it in his room, the AK-47 and the missing cleaning rod, the glitter that connected Megan, the party, the rifle, and his truck, the obsessive late-night cleaning of his vehicle, the canyon where Megan's body was found, an area he had once described as a good place to hide bodies. They also called survivors like Donna to testify. Their stories showed that Megan's death was not an isolated event, but the escalation of a pattern Sanchez had repeated over and over. In 2003, the jury found Sanchez guilty of first-degree murder and multiple counts related to his other victims. He was sentenced to death. Years later, when California placed a moratorium on executions, his sentence effectively turned into life on death row. He remains confined, now in his mid-50s, with no realistic chance of release. Even with a conviction, some questions remain. Investigators suspect Sanchez may have had more victims who never came forward or whose cases were never linked. Megan appears to be the only woman he killed, but when it comes to the number of women he stalked, abducted, and assaulted, the full truth may never be known. Megan did everything right that night. She stayed with friends, didn't drink heavily, and simply drove home after a long, ordinary holiday. Her killer wasn't lurking in a stereotypical, dangerous place. He was already woven into the community, practicing his crimes in secret until one night he escalated beyond survival. Cases like Megan's remind us that behind every headline is a real person, a daughter, a friend, a sister, whose life was full of plans and relationships before it was reduced to a court file and a news story. If you'd like more in-depth, respectful coverage of cases like this, make sure you're subscribed to CrimeNest. Your support through likes, comments, and shares helps CrimeNest keep telling these stories with care, detail, and empathy instead of shock value. Thank you for watching, and let us know your thoughts about this case in the comments.